I surrender to the Almighty, my mind, speech and body. Vanakkam. We are reading the book called Thirukkural, given to us by our Tamil ancestors. This is a book on Aram. Aram is the order found in nature. This book tells us how humans can grow in the path of love. It says that we start this life's journey as an individual soul who cares only about our own self, and then it shows us that we can slowly learn to turn our self-love outwards through the process of marriage, having kids, receiving guests, serving the society, and finally, we learn to let go all of this towards a higher purpose. Thus, we learn to form attachments as a householder and then let go of it all in the last stage called sannyasam. The aram for the householder is called as the illaram, and the aram for the sannyasi is called as the turavaram. And Thirukkural talks about illaram and turavaram. Now, Parimazharagar writes commentaries for Thirukkural. He first gives us an introduction about how the book is structured, who should read it and why. And this introduction portion is called as the Urai Payiram, and we have finished reading this Urai Payiram written by Parimazharagar. Now, I have told you that the Thirukkural book is divided into three big sections called Paal, and now we are entering the first Paal. It is called as the Arathu Paal, and this is going to explain all the Aram. Now, in this Paal, we have four smaller sections called as Iyal, and the first Iyal is called as the Payira viyal. Payira viyal. Payiram we know means introduction. So, this Iyal called Payira viyal is the introduction given by Thiruvalluvar for the entire book. So now we are entering the Payira viyal, and we see that there are 4 chapters in this Payira viyal, and we are going to start the first chapter. The first chapter in this Payira viyal is called as the Kadavul Vaazhthu. Kadavul Vaazhthu. Now each chapter has exactly 10 couplets called as Kurals. Thiruvalluvar conveys all of his messages in these couplets made of 7 words. As you can see here, these are the couplets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. And for each chapter, what Parimazharagar does is, he starts with a small introduction in a few lines in the beginning of the chapter. This is a chapter, and Parimazharagar starts with a small introduction in the beginning of the chapter here, and then he goes on to write his explanations for these couplets beneath the Kural, like this. He gives a few lines in a paragraph or two as the explanations for the Kurals, but his few lines require us a few hours of explanation. So I just wanted to show you what the book looks like. So anyway, in the last video, I told you that the world is made of things that move and things that don't move. And then each thing is made of something more fundamental called Gunas, which can be translated as properties or attributes or a quality. And there are 3 Gunas, the Sathvikam Guna, the Rajasam Guna and the Tamasam Guna. And even though there are several thousands of things around us in this world, all of them can be defined as a combination of these 3 fundamental gunas. Now, the Sathvikam Guna is responsible for the creative things, wisdom, education, music, etc. The Rajasam Guna is responsible for the actions that we do, and the Tamasam Guna is responsible for destruction, lethargy, incorrect understanding, also called as Mayakam in Tamil. And these are things that we saw in the last video. And we go through these 3 gunas in our daily lives, and it looks like we have no control over it. For example, sometimes on a weekend, we will feel all energetic and we will want to do a lot of things, cleaning, cooking, dishes, gardening and so on. This is the Rajasic Guna acting on us. But this Guna doesn't stay with us for every weekend. On other weekends, we realize that it's a great effort just to climb out of bed. And now we are in Tamasic Guna. So it would be very useful if we could somehow change the Guna as per our convenience. Then we can successfully accomplish many tasks, isn't it? And this is where we left off in the last video. So how can we control our Gunas? Our ancestors show us that the gunas experienced by us can be changed as per our wish because it resides in two things: the air that we breathe and the food that we take in. You see, whatever the type of fuel we put in for our car, so will be the efficiency of the vehicle. Similarly, for this body, whatever input we put in, so will be the output. Therefore, the guna depends on the air we inhale and the food that we consume. Whatever food we eat, we acquire its guna. So now we can choose our food wisely. For example, when we are going to write an exam and then we want to remember things and think clearly, so then we have to be the Sathvikam guna. So then it would be better to take the foods that have a dominant Sathvikam quality. But how do we find out what guna is dominant in a food? At the most basic level, they have already told us the color for each guna. So we could use color as an indicator of the guna. I had mentioned that the color white is associated with Sathvikam, the color orange or red is associated with Rajasam, and black is associated with Tamasam. And a good majority of the foods, not all of them, but a majority of the foods tend to show the respective color for the dominant guna that they carry. Most of the Sathvikam foods tend to have a lighter color like milk or fruits or grains. The fried, fermented and spicy foods and fatty foods tend to have a tamasic guna. So most processed food and alcohol carry the tamasic quality. It is said that foods that grow below the ground like garlic and potatoes also tend to have a dominant tamasic quality. And it is for this reason that the educators or the brahmanas avoided the tamasic foods because they needed to keep their Sathvikam guna dominant. But please note that not all of us will require Sathvikam guna all the time. For instance, for a soldier or an athlete, they need to be active in the body, and we are going to need Rajasic guna. We don't want Sathvikam guna for her work. She is going to need Rajasic guna for that kind of active physical work. So milk and fruits won't be sufficient for them. Meat products, on the other hand, are dominant in the Rajasic guna. So a warrior or a soldier was given a diet that was rich in Rajasic guna. So depending on the nature of the activity that we are about to engage in, our ancestors recommended food accordingly. In the modern times today, we all know the taste of the foods: sweet, salt, bitter, pungent, etc. We also know the nutrient and the calorific content of foods. But the gunas, that's something new, isn't it? Our ancestors found this aspect of foods and they recommended the appropriate foods for the work at hand. In those days and even now, even the clothes worn by people had this reference. For example, the robes that are worn by Nitas or the Sannyasis or the saints, they are usually saffron or white. Actually, white is usually worn by the Sannyasis who have renounced all of their attachments, and saffron or red are worn by people who are trying to become a sannyasi, someone who is taking an effort towards a goal. We can also try to bring in the guna in our clothing. If we want to get a good night's sleep, then we can try to sleep on white sheets. The Sathvikam guna would increase our chances of getting a good undisturbed sleep. So we understand that food is one way to alter the guna. The next factor that is used to change the guna is the air that we breathe. See, if you observe like this, we see that at any time, the amount of air that we inhale and exhale is not the same in both the nostrils all the time. At some times, only one nostril allows more air in and out than the other, and only sometimes the air is equally inhaled and exhaled in both the nostrils. And right now, my right nostril is inhaling more than the left. You can try this for yourself. You can put your hands and see which nostril is dominant. Our ancestors observed that there is a relationship between the gunas and this passage of air through these nostrils. Depending on which nostril is dominant, a particular guna becomes dominant in us. And this information becomes useful when they found that it is possible to change the guna by changing this flow of air in the nostrils. There is a separate branch of science that studied this relationship between the gunas and the breath, that is, which nostril is associated with which guna, and how to move from Rajasic to Sattvic and Tamas using our breathing. This branch of science is called as the Pranayama. Now, we may not be able to directly alter our guna or mind or mood, but we can definitely control our breathing, isn't it? That is very much possible. So, this pranayama is a practical way to alter the gunas. By changing the breathing pattern, we can change our guna. Pranayama is actually one of the steps of the Ashtanga Yoga, that is asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, etc. We will discuss about these steps of yoga later in the book. The language Tamil is not just grammar and stories and poems, it has touched all the subject areas. So anyway, coming back to pranayama, there are 3 types of pranayama. There was a scholar in the late 19th to 20th century called Thiru Kalyana Sundaram, or in short Thiru Ka, and he writes about these 3 types of pranayama. They are Thoola Pranayama, Sukuma Pranayama and Karana Pranayama. Again, they are Thoola Pranayama, Sukuma Pranayama and Karana Pranayama. When we go to the beach or forest or a garden, there's lots of fresh air, and when we breathe in this air, this itself will put us in the Sathvikam Guna. And when we are in a polluted city and we breathe in that air, that could easily agitate us and cause irritation, and this could put us in the Tamasic Guna. So this method of changing the guna by moving to a different physical location is called as a Thoola Pranayama. Now the second type of pranayama is where we manually regulate the breath, like closing one nostril and breathing through the other and counting the time of the inhale and exhale. This technique is called as the Sukuma Pranayama. The third type of pranayama is called as the Karana Pranayama. Only a few experienced and wise people, also called as jnanis, know about this. Jnanam means wisdom, so somebody who is rich in wisdom is called as a jnani. Here the air is inhaled once and that's all. There is no exhalation after this. They keep circulating the same air inside as long as they want. And that's how it seems yogis and sadhus could live for hundreds of years inside caves in samadhi. Will you believe this? So when we learn to train our breathing by using the pranayama techniques and closing our nostrils and counting the breath and all that, over time what will happen is we will be able to bring in the type of breath that we want as and when we desire. So then imagine the increase in the productivity in our lives. If all the employees could bring themselves to a Rajasic Guna before the start of the work, or students could somehow bring themselves to the Sathvikam in their exam hall, we can surely be more productive, isn't it? So that is how we change our gunas using the breath and the food. Now there are other books on yoga and pranayama that will go deeper into the subject, but I have given you a basic understanding of what it is. So we have seen what the gunas are and how the food and air can be used to change the gunas. Now when we move from one guna to another, for example when we move from the Sathvikam to Tamasam, what happens is our mind tends to get a little confused. Something like, I was happy and fine in the morning, and now all of a sudden I feel like I don't want to do anything. What is wrong with me? Is something wrong? So here what has happened is we have moved from Rajasam to Tamasam. And when the gunas meet, there is a possibility for confusion in the mind. So how do we overcome this confusion? It would be nice to be prepared for such changes, isn't it? Also, is there anything else other than food and air that can alter our gunas? Actually, there is. Our ancestors observed that we experience the gunas in a certain pattern as we move through time. What I mean is, as we move through the days of the week, the gunas change in a certain pattern. On certain days of the week, a certain guna becomes dominant. Something like on Mondays, we tend to experience more of the Sathvikam Guna, and on Saturdays, we tend to experience more of Tamasam Guna. Also, they observed a pattern in the way the gunas changed in a month and also in a year. Now, food and air we can control, but what about these weekly, monthly changes? How do we know when these gunas are dominant and how to prepare ourselves for these changes? I will talk about that in the next video. For now, we have seen what the gunas are and how the food and the air can help us to change these gunas. I will encourage you to think about it, and I will see you all in the next video. Thank you for listening. Nandri Vanakkam.